Back in 2012, I put out my first bow building videos showing how to build an Osage flat bow. And since that time, I have heard from countless individuals saying that that series is the most detailed and comprehensive videos on bow building on the web. But here's the deal. When you get into bow building, you never stop learning, and I have learned a lot since those first videos came out. And so I wanted to let you know about a new resource that's available on my website. But before we do that, I want to show you a couple of excerpts so you can get an idea for the type of information and how detailed this new video series is going to be.
I want this ring to come and step down into this ring rather than being feathered out. I don't want it feathered out, and that's what a lot of new bowyers will do. Is they're so cautious that they're trying to kind of scrape it really slowly like this, you know, and they end up feathering this thing way out here. It's harder to back a bow that way than it is if you take this ring and just have a steep, blunted off step down. Because when you're bringing your knife to it, if that thing has that step, your knife can actually catch in it. Whereas if it's really feathered off, it's really hard for your knife to catch in it, so it tends to ride up and over.
What we're gonna do is lay out the bow along the natural grain no matter where it goes, get the bow pretty much built and roughed out, and then, and I'll cover this in another section, we'll go ahead and heat that bow and bend everything into alignment. That way everything is running with the grain and you're not having to cut across the grain at all. So splitting off bellywood like this is a very fast, very efficient way to do it, but you really need to pay attention to how deep you saw this slot right here, because this is the critical part of it. And this one's gonna do perfect. We're gonna have to heat this thing up and bend everything into alignment. So the majority of our heat is gonna be applied to the belly side and a little bit to the sides as well. All right, so I've got this clamped down far enough so that that limb tip has raised up, this limb tip is raised up, the center has been pushed down, and I've clamped it down far enough so that I'm actually past where I want to end up, because when this thing cools and I take this clamp off, it's gonna spring back a little bit. My finger right now would be right about where the limb tip will end up when I take this thing out of the clamp. So I'm probably an inch past where I want it to end up. That looks good right there. If I took a string from this knock to that knock, it would run right down through the middle of the handle. So that's exactly what I want. To line this bow up, all I'm gonna do is heat this limb, and I'm gonna take this limb tip and twist it over. You don't have to bend the entire limb one way or the other. You just have to twist this thing. Okay. That looks just about perfect. You see that? All right, so this bow has got an obvious hinge starting to develop right in here, and we can see that as we draw the bow. We can see that we're getting a lot of bend right in this area. And so you definitely, if you see something like that starting, as soon as you see it starting, you need to go ahead and take a pencil and mark that so that you know not to remove any more wood from there. What you've got to do to fix this is take wood off everywhere else until that arc matches what's going on here and everything starts to get evened out. Now, during the tillering process, when we were talking about that, I had mentioned that you don't ever want to put more pressure on your bow than your target draw weight. So if you're shooting for a 55-pound bow, you don't want to put 60 pounds of pressure on it. Now, with that said, if you see a problem like this, if you see a hinge starting to develop, don't go to 55 pounds, because you're going to make that hinge, you are going to make that a big problem, because all that bend is coming in right at that hinge area. And so when you're working your way through the tillering process and you're pulling it a little bit at a time, you know, you might only be at 40 pounds, but if you see a problem starting to develop, stop and fix it first, then go on with the tillering process. And so what I'm going to do, just to restate, I'm going to mark this with a pencil. I'm going to take wood off everywhere else until this thing starts to even out. So if you think about a bow as just an energy storage device, you put the energy into the bow stores the energy. This bow is going to have much, much more capability or potential to store that energy, because just to get these limb tips back to where this bow is already sitting, you're already having to put a bunch of energy into that bow. And so when you have this bow strung, the limbs are basically preloaded with energy. Now when I heat this, I'm primarily going to heat the sides. I don't want to put a lot of heat on the belly side, because as we bend this thing down, we're going to be putting the belly side under tension, which it normally wouldn't be under when the bow is being drawn and shot. But in this process, your belly is under tension, and if you put a bunch of heat on there, you're going to end up tempering that belly, and tempering it is going to make it crack as you bend this thing down. With this degree of reflex, it's probably not going to be a big deal, but if you get into making recurves, that's a big deal, is just making sure that you're only heating the sides and not the belly. So these are a couple of excerpts that I pulled from a new 3-disc DVD set that's available on my website. With over 4 hours of video instruction, these are by far the most comprehensive and detailed set of videos available on DVD, and we cover absolutely everything that you need to know, including the problems that you're bound to run into that everybody else seems to skip over. I'm going to go ahead and put a link down below this video in the description that's going to take you over to the website so that you can check this DVD set out. Now, I guarantee that the information that you find in this DVD set is going to help you to become a better bowyer. Doesn't matter if you're just getting started or if you've been building bows for 10 years, you are going to find information in here that is going to help you to become better. It might make you more efficient. It might improve your design. It might give you ideas for how to do things that you've never thought about before. But you're going to find something in there, and probably not just something, but a lot of stuff in there that is going to help you to become better. Now, if you get this DVD set and you don't agree with that, if you don't find anything in there that's helpful to you, send them back to me and I will give you a refund. I am that confident in the information that's available in these DVDs. One of the reasons that I love bow making so much is the transformation of that piece of wood from raw material to very finely crafted, deadly weapon. And you did that with your own 2 hands. And when you're finally able to cast that first arrow from a bow that you've made, I see it in my students all the time, the joy that they get from that, because they know that they accomplished that, they did that themselves. Throughout this course, we're going to cover everything that you need to know to build self-bows. But we're going to go beyond that. We're going to dive in depth into building not only self-bows, but high-performance self-bows. We're talking about bows that will match and oftentimes exceed the performance of a factory-produced glass bow, such as the Bear Montana. So if you have 0 experience with woodworking, don't let that intimidate you. The best way to learn is just to get a piece of wood and start making shavings. In this series, we're going to use Osage a lot, but that doesn't really matter. If you're working with elm or hickory or something else, everything basically is the same. Whether you're building, it doesn't matter what kind of wood, even if you're building a board bow, all the things are going to be the same. There's going to be specifics like chasing a ring and things like that that are going to be specific to certain types of woods. And if you're working with yew, it might be thinning out the sapwood. And so different woods are going to have different things, just little peculiarities that are characteristic or specific to that species. But for the most part, the bow building process is not going to be any different, whether you're building a board bow, an Osage, a hickory, or a Pacific yew bow. So again, links in the description. Click on that, go check it out, and we'll see you next time.